There's a certain group set of audiophiles who debate DACs, Delta Sigma or R2R ladder. People say that oversampling DACs sound processed and lose the original character of the music. Others say that oversampling DACs increase fidelity. And audio companies just love the debates, because they get to play both sides. Whatever little differences might be present between DAC designs becomes the basis for ever pricier gear. If you recall, last year, Drop partnered with Arist Audio to release their R2R ladder DAC called the Arist R2R DAC. It's a simple name for a simple concept for a niche market. There are non-oversampling DACs around, but from years past. If you frequent US Audio Mart, you will see listings for such devices. The prices start around $200, and that's a lot to pay for ancient gear, when newer products can be purchased for cheaper or a little bit more. Clearly, the market for R2R ladder DACs isn't exploding. So, HiFiMan read the tea leaves, thought long and hard about market transitions, upcoming technologies, and what customers are demanding, and HiFiMan decided to release an R2R ladder DAC and a small digital audio player. In 2017, HiFiMan came out with the R2R2000, a clunky name for a clunky device that cost $2,500. So really, HiFiMan should have called it the R2R2000. It didn't sell like hotcakes. You can barely find any reviews for the product, and those that exist talk about the questionable user interface. Was it possible that HiFiMan misread the tea leaves? Never trust Darjeeling tea! Well, maybe HiFiMan changed to Earl Grey and decided to release a second, cheaper version of the R2R2000. They call it, wait for it, the HiFiMan R2R2000 Red, because it's the color red. The Red costs $1,000. It's got the same build quality, size, and lack of features as the $2,500 Big Brother. And is it the audiophile DAP you've been waiting for? No, of course not. This is HiFiMan we're talking about. I have never seen a company excel at falling on its face except for HiFiMan. They do it all the time. And the R2R2000 Red is yet another expensive HiFiMan product that is a mixed bag. The Red is not exactly like the more expensive black version. The older $2,500 DAP has a PCM 1704K DAC. This is a rare and sought-after chipset, or so HiFiMan and some of its promoters say. But the Red has the PCM 1702 DAC. It's cheaper than the 1704K. According to the one or two reviewers who compared the products, the sound differences between the 1702 and 1704K are minor. Other than the DACs and the paint job, the red and black are the same design. And boy, what a design it is! Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and I behold ugliness, which is pretty consistent with HiFiMan's design concepts. The Red is a tiny device. It's a flagship price DAP that is about the same size as Sony's entry-level NW series DAPs. The Red has one physical button, the on-off sleep-wake button. It has one knob on the top right. The knob turns by clicks, and it feels like plastic even though it is made of metal. How HiFiMan achieved this is a metallurgical miracle done backwards. The Red has a 3.5mm and 4.4mm balanced output. It's got a USB-C charge and data port on the bottom. The features of the Red can be counted very quickly. Ready? First, it plays high-resolution PCM audio and no DSD. Second, it has a monochrome OLED screen that has no multi-touch. The navigation is done entirely by 6 hard-coded buttons that take up the bottom third of the screen. Third, it has a proprietary operating system which I will very generously call a user interface. Fourth, it has 3 gain settings depending on whether you're using balanced or single-ended output. Fifth, it has Bluetooth. And sixth, it has USB DAC mode that works with PCs and mobile devices. There you go. That's the list. No wait, there are a few more things. My brand new player came with a scratch on the left side. For a few moments after I took the player out of the box, I worried HiFiMan was losing its stylistic imperfect quality control failures. Seeing that scratch helped me realize HiFiMan is still working hard at ignoring the vacant quality control position at the factory floor. Speaking of the box, it's not a bad box, but I think HiFiMan could have just packaged the player in a more reasonably sized one and devoted the money they would have saved on things that really matter. For example, it would have been really nice to get a protective case and a screen protector for this $1,000 DAP. This, of course, is perfectly in line with some other flagship DAPs. For example, Sony doesn't provide a case or screen protector for their $830 NW-ZX507. Let's assume you're still interested in the R2R2000. How is the amazing PCM 1702 R2R ladder non-oversampling DAC sound? Well, it sounds pretty good. Once you get past the weird design, lackluster quality control, and lack of features, the sound out of the Red is quite enjoyable. For my initial impressions, I used the audeze LCD1, Campfire Audio Andromeda, COS KPH30i, and the Blonde BL03. I played high-resolution FLAC files because you can't stream anything. The overall sound signature is fairly neutral. Lots of manufacturers claim neutral but really provide a treble emphasis, so not quite neutral. The Red, on the other hand, has an excellent treble extension without the harshness. The bass is not emphasized, something I appreciated when testing the COS. The mids sound absolutely clear. There is no muddiness or harshness anywhere in the frequency range. There is no distortion. Of course, as you change from one headphone to another, the sound will also change, sometimes dramatically and other times slightly. The bottom line is that anyone who thinks that older DACs lack detail or dynamics need to actually hear some of the older stock of DACs. Compared to DAPs like the Shanling M2X, Sony NW-ZX507, and Astro & Kern Con Cube, the R2R2000 Red has a different sonic character. All of these DACs do their own thing. The M2X is probably the most neutral of the group. The Cube is close to neutral with an added bit of smoothness in the mids and treble. The Sony is warm sounding with rolled off treble and mids focus. And the Red, by comparison, provides a surprising amount of detail in the mids that these other DAPs don't quite reproduce. The biggest difference that I could hear is the excellent separation of frequency groups. The bass had a hard separation from the mids, which were themselves separated from the treble. I kept listening for muddiness someplace in the frequency range. Whether I played hip-hop, classical, jazz, pop, ambient, I couldn't get the Red to sound muddy. And with headphones like the COS, which have some muddiness inherent in the drivers, the Red did not add any melding of frequencies that I could tell. The Red has some of the sonic character of the other DAPs I mentioned. It has the Con Cube's gentler treble, but just maybe slightly more rolled off. It has the Sony's deep bass without distortion. It has the M2X's neutral mids, but pushed up a step or two. And the Red has slightly better separation of instruments than any of these other DAPs. It's marginal, but noticeable. I don't like using the word natural to describe sound. It's an amorphous term. But I could not hear any artificial bump in the treble or forced decrease in the bass or unusual mids distortion or melding. There was literally nothing I could immediately find as objectionable. Some might claim that this is the R2R magic. Okay, well, let's not get ahead of ourselves. I have the Arist R2R DAC and it doesn't sound magical. What I can hypothesize is that the 1702 DAC is quality. The 1702 is not harsh or muddy. It does not accentuate any frequency, although it does noticeably pull back on the treble. Its sonic character is unique by degrees. In a market saturated by Sabre and AKM chipsets, it's a true pleasure to hear something different. Burr Brown chips in DAPs are becoming harder to find every year, and Wilson chips are unfortunately relegated to cheap Chinese players on Amazon. Consequently, to find a modern DAP that effectively uses a DAC from the early 2000s is refreshing. Okay, when I said that the Red is a modern DAP, I meant released in the last few years. In all other respects, the Red is downright anachronistic. The UI is neither slow nor responsive, it's a murky middle ground. You have to repeatedly click on the digital buttons to move through the list. Pressing down on a button continuously does not result in a list moving accordingly. You have to tap over and over and over again to get through any menus. This means that if you have a large media library, you could theoretically spend a frustrating amount of time just finding your albums. The Red doesn't have album or lyric menus. I don't really care about these features and never use them in my other DAPs, but for $1,000, HiFiMan, you must be joking. You can't search for anything either, not a single thing. Of course, not having a digital keyboard would make searching for albums or artists somewhat difficult. The volume adjustment is not a smooth transition. The Red has a 32-step volume adjustment, which is subpar for a $1,000 product. Even Sony's entry-level DAPs have 120 steps, which leaves room for fine adjustments. The lack of physical controls is a big problem. It's inexcusable. I cannot think of any other DAP that has this idiotic limitation. There is no justification for withholding physical controls. And, of course, the Red cannot stream any music from Spotify, Tidal, Qbuzz, Amazon, or any other online streaming service. The device doesn't even have Wi-Fi, so forget about updating the infrequent firmware over the air. The R2R2000 is not for everyone. In fact, it's for very few people. You have to be content with basic music playback, limited user features, and the HiFiMan quirks. If you can get past these nagging issues and you really want something different, something that next year's FIO M30 or Astro & Current's SP2000 or whatever else is pushed out won't have, then the Red is worth a closer examination. Instead of jumping on the bandwagon to bring out another DAP that uses the same components as everyone else, HiFiMan looked to the past and took a course unused by others. I cannot say that the Red is a product for the average audiophile, because it isn't. The average audiophile deserves a lot more for their money. Indeed, it is hard enough to justify the Sony NW-ZX507 at $800, even though that player actually has every feature anyone could want. But $1,000 for basic music playback? Yikes! And that's totally fine. This product is for those who want sonic excellence and are willing to pay an absurd premium. Think Focal Utopia and Woo Audio Tube amp excessiveness. That is the crowd HiFiMan is aiming at. For that target market, $1,000 is not particularly shocking. These audiophiles buy products with the intent to get maximum use for years. These people are not necessarily expecting to upgrade to new gear in 1 or 2 years. I'm looking forward to comparing the R2R2000 Red. It's an expensive player with limited features, but the sound might just be worth the cost of entry for a particular group.